This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeff Malinoff, and with me is Mark Souza. We have a lot about the NBA trade deadline to talk about because in the last 24 hours, a lot has happened, and we're only a mere few hours away from the end of it, and we're going to expect a lot more to come. We might even have some to come while we're doing this show, so it's very exciting times. Also, a little bit about the NFL. Antonio Brown has a little domestic violence issue. We'll talk about that. And other things of that nature. So let's just get right into the NBA trade deadline. That's the biggest topic of the day by far. There's been multiple trades that happened in the course of hours. One of the biggest things that people are talking about is Harrison Barnes and his trade to Sacramento. Not the trade itself, but as he was playing the game, the trade was finalized. So they took him out of the game because he was literally not on their team anymore. Mm-hmm. They had a guy not on their team on the game for like a period of time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the trade officially went down until he came off the court.
I know, but it's kind of ridiculous to think of it as like that because he heard about it as he was on the bench, and his face almost said it all. Like he almost couldn't comprehend what was going on because the fact he literally just got traded and he's no longer on the team he's sitting on the bench for. Mm-hmm. So that was probably the biggest news story because there was also LeBron James putting his 2 cents in about it. So
it looks like now that was pretty blown up. I mean. We now learned that Harrison Barnes knew that he was being traded before the game started, so he was not shocked. It wasn't out of the blue. He knew that during the game he was likely going to get traded, and he did. But, of course, at the time it was a big deal. We did see LeBron's comments. We saw him pretty much, I guess, arguing that the players, I don't know. What was his point, actually? What was his actual point?
Players wanting to leave a team, they're, abandoning them. But when a team trades them like this, it's like, oh, it's good for them. It's good for the team's sake type of thing. It's like it's a one-way street when it comes to criticizing someone for leaving a team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was kind of a dumb thing to say for LeBron, to be honest with you.
I think he just misworded it, it feels like.
I mean, I get his point, but... I mean, you can do whatever you want, man. You get criticized, and you've been able to play for whatever team you've wanted to play for. So it's not really, if you can't take the heat, then move teams. That's what you give up, right? If you make a decision, it's called freedom of speech in this country. Yeah. We have a freedom to have an opinion on something you do, but you are free to express yourself and free to move along as you please. So, I don't know. It just seems real petty from him.
I'll say his entire quote, okay? So he says, so let me get this. This is, wait, so he says this weird. It's like improper grammar. So let me guess. He doesn't put a comma, so it goes, let me guess this. So let me guess, this is cool because they had to do what was best for the team, right? 3 question marks. Traded this man while he was literally playing in the game and had zero ideas. Zero is capitalized. I'm not knocking who traded him because it's a business and you have to do what you feel what's best. But I just want this narrative to start to get real/change and not when a player wants to be traded or leaves a franchise that he's a selfish, ungrateful player. But when they trade you, release, waive, cut, etc., it's best for them. I'm okay with both, honestly. Truly am. Just call. That was kind of confusing how he said it.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
I understand what he was trying to say, but it was just didn't really grammar-wise. It didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's Instagram. I mean, whatever. But we all get what he's saying, and what he's saying is, it's a business when a team does it, but when a player does it, there's something of a personality defect, right? So,
absolutely, yeah.
I don't know, man. Just seems like an odd time for him to say something like that, especially when he is, I guess, in the middle of a trade controversy himself, and we all know that he has his hands all over this Anthony Davis trade. The Lakers would not be pursuing a trade of that magnitude without speaking to LeBron James about it. So, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Like, it just seems real. I just roll my eyes at stuff like that because why is he so sensitive? He was able to go to the Lakers and people are upset with him. He was able to go with the Heat and people are upset with him, but
I think
he got to do it.
I think people were more cool with him going to the Lakers because it wasn't such a big deal because of the Cleveland thing. I think because
he won a championship with them, or what?
I think that is also a big reason, but it's also like he didn't make it like a big national television thing. They didn't make it like he wasn't his choice really, but they didn't make it into this big national televised event of him.
And probably because he left once, so it was like, oh.
Yeah, but I think it was also like they understood the management in the front office was a problem. Mm-hmm. And also the fact, like you said, he won a championship, so it's almost it's okay because he brought a championship like he said he was going to. He kept the promise. So, But regardless, that wasn't the only trade the Kings made because Nick Stauskas got traded twice in a matter of hours?
Yes.
Which I thought was pretty amazing. He got traded to the Rockets from Cleveland. No, he got traded to Cleveland.
Him and Wayne Baldwin, they both got traded again. It's the same two players that were traded the day before.
Right. Yeah, and they went to Cleveland and then they're in Houston now. I believe they're both in Houston. I could be wrong. But I just think this is how crazy the trade deadline is. People thought this was going to be a nice and quiet trade deadline, like not a lot of big moves. And then like 7 moves happened in the matter of 24
hours. People thought
hours.
that?
There was some talks that this was going to be a quiet trade deadline, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually also talks of Markelle Fultz being interested by multiple teams, so he might not be a Sixer for very long either.
Oh, yeah, I definitely expect more trades to go down. That's interesting, though, because, I mean, most NBA people thought this was going to be a very active trade deadline just because of the cap room that a lot of teams had this summer. Teams looking at the outside looking in, but a few teams definitely being in the mix. But
it was mainly like it was a Bleacher Report that said multiple reports of his other reporters or something of that nature said they thought it was being very quiet as of a week ago. Because
sounds like somebody needing to write a story and get some attention.
Yeah, but it was quiet in the last week, all things considered.
Oh, yeah, but once you get closer to the deadline, that's when it heats up.
But usually the week before has some trades every now and again, but there were, 1, 2?
Yeah, but, I mean, compared to the last few deadlines, I mean, the DeMarcus Cousins trade 2 years ago, but last year was pretty quiet, I would say. It's been really active, and, of course, Anthony Davis might still get traded. We don't know that for sure if he will or will not.
Yeah, that's still a 50-50 to me. Again, there's hours before the end of the deadline, 3 p.m. Eastern, which is, I believe, noon in Pacific Coast time, if I'm not mistaken. So right now it's a 7:48 a.m. as we're doing this podcast. So they have about 4 or 5 hours, 4 hours roughly.
4 hours and 12 minutes.
Yeah, to get this done.
Tick, tick, tick,
which
tick, tick, tick.
In general manager speak, that's plenty of time.
So let's see. What trade did you just say? So the Kings traded Amon Shumpert to the Rockets. The Rockets,
3-team trade.
Rockets traded a first-round pick to the Cavaliers. The Rockets traded a second-round pick to the Kings. The Kings also acquired Alec Burks from the Cavaliers in this 3-team trade. And, of course, like you mentioned, Baldwin and Stauskas go to Houston in all of this. That's an interesting trade. The Rockets landing Shumpert, I think, makes a lot of sense. It gives them another guard to their team, and with their depth issues, it definitely helps. The Kings get Alec Burks, who could be a bench scorer from them. Again, that makes sense. It is a little bit interesting that the Kings traded Shumpert because he was a starter for them and by all intents and purposes doing positive things for that team. But yeah, I understand it for every team involved. I think Cleveland really makes out here. All they do is give away Alec Burks and they get a first-round pick. I mean, that's what they end up with.
Yes, and also the Kings did also get Harrison Barnes, who is a very quality player, is averaging over 17 points a game for the Mavericks. But honestly, the Mavericks got rid of him for budgetary purposes. He has a $25 million option this next season, and they want a max deal with Porzingis, with not just Porzingis, but add another player to that mix. So they're going to be trying to push hard for free agency as well. So don't be surprised if the Mavericks get a big-time name next in this free agent class.
Yeah, so the entire deal was Harrison Barnes to Sacramento for Zach Randolph and Justin Jackson. So, like you mentioned,
Justin Jackson's a rookie deal, and they're going to buy out Zach Randolph's contract.
Yeah, more than likely they buy out Zach Randolph regardless. He's an expiring contract, so he's just expiring money that they can use on another free agent. Justin Jackson does not make too much, as you mentioned. He's on a rookie deal. For the Mavericks, that's a great trade just because they now have more flexibility going forward. They now can add in maybe a third star to pair with Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis. As for the Kings, it makes sense because they're right on the cusp of a playoff run. They really didn't have a true three on their team. So Harrison Barnes, a 6'8" forward, provides that, although Harrison Barnes has been struggling the last couple of seasons, and he's definitely struggled this year with the Dallas Mavericks. He does average, 18.5 points a game, but it is on a lot of shots, so he has not been efficient. The Kings will need him to become a more efficient scorer, but it does provide their team with more flexibility because as of yesterday, the Kings had, I think, one player on their team that was between 6'6" and 6'8", and that player was Justin Jackson. And Justin Jackson is not as good as Harrison Barnes, so it gives their team more flexibility, a starter right away that they can pair with the rest of that young team.
Mm-hmm. And also just more on the trade deadline. The big one is Gasol being moved. I think he's probably going to get moved. Multiple teams are eyeing him. Him and Conley is also being eyed as well. But it sounds like it's more likely Gasol is going to be traded than Conley because they're asking a lot for Conley. But
I was reading that Conley, there was a deal in place to Utah, and he declined it.
He wanted to go to the East, supposedly.
So very interesting because Utah's a good team.
Yeah.
I thought Conley would be a great addition to that team, if I'm being completely honest, because I just feel he's so much better than Ricky Rubio.
It also might be the scenery that might throw him off. But I think it's also being on the West Coast. Maybe he wants to be on an Eastern Conference team. So maybe better chance at playoffs. So I'm just trying to think of
Utah's going to make the playoffs, so I don't know what his... Honestly, it just seems weird that he would turn down a chance to play on that team. But
there could be a million reasons why, but we really don't know.
It's definitely not for competitive reasons, so we don't know what that is. But he said no to a really good team that could really use him too. That I'm a little bit disappointed in that not going through because Conley on the Jazz could make them a legitimate, top 4 team in the West.
Yeah.
I would put them over pretty much every team except for Golden State, maybe Denver at that point. But I guess it will not happen. So
yeah,
both teams will have to move on. We did have a couple other trades yesterday. The Wizards dealt Otto Porter to the Bulls for Jabari Parker and Bobby Portis. An interesting trade there. I think Porter's very good. But I don't know why the Bulls really wanted him, to be honest with you. Seems like a weird move. It makes sense for the Wizards. They get rid of Porter's contract, but he makes a lot of money to go to the Bulls. I just don't know if he's the right fit there.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of different talks. Like, we really don't know how everything's going to go down. But with the trade you said from the Washington trade, yeah, you're right. There is some questions about it. But honestly, I think a lot of these, I might be stating the obvious, I'm not sure here, but I think a lot of these moves are pure budgetary when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I mean, for the Wizards, it definitely was. But for the Bulls, they add on a big contract, a team that's really bad.
Yeah, but the Bulls are the Bulls.
And we don't know, what if Porter is good enough to, I don't know. Like it would make sense for a better team to acquire Porter because he's a good 3-and-D guy, but now he's, I guess, the leader of the team. Like he's the number one option. That is really odd.
Yeah, he's not a number one option guy, but I think he would have been honestly more valuable last year. To be completely honest with you, he was kind of a commodity last year. He was in the talks of trade deadline also last year. So there is a trade. Like he is a good player, no doubt about it. But as a number one guy, I don't think that's right. But the Bulls are in a seriously bad place, competitively wise. So it doesn't surprise me that he turned out to be a number one guy.
We did see another trade yesterday. The Pistons traded Stanley Johnson of the Bucks for Thon Maker. That happened earlier in the day. I don't really know what to make of that. The Pistons I don't really think they know what they're doing, to be honest with you. I could be wrong, but
I don't know if they're pushing for a title or not title, excuse me.
Well, they're definitely pushing to make their roster weird. That's for sure.
Make their roster. We want the weirdest roster in the NBA. Let's get the weirdest players.
Yeah, they don't really have any wings, and they traded their one wing.
Stanley Johnson's been a bust though, so can't really make a big deal out of that one. My personal opinion, because he came out of Arizona looking pretty impressive, and he's done almost nothing, maybe even nothing. I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything spectacular come from him since he got drafted.
Right. All right. What do you think? We should take a break and come back?
Sure, we can take a break. But first, I want to talk to you guys about investing. Because when investing and planning for your retirement, it's always best to get advice from the experts. Best-selling author Harry Dent, America's #1 economist, says the dark window is open. There's an opportunity to rapidly boost your retirement savings for the greatest stock market crash in American history. But this dark window won't be open for long. You can make up to 10 times the annual stock market gain in just a few short months. Find out more by going to www.harrydentforecast.com. There's a very short time to take advantage of this dark window opportunity. So once again, go to www.harrydentforecast.com to learn more.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, everyone, to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We are in the middle of the NBA talks. And, of course, one of the main stories is Anthony Davis. So, Mark, there's been back and forth talks when it comes down to where Anthony Davis is he going to stay. When it comes to the Pelicans, is he going to go to Lakers? Is he going to go to another team? What are your thoughts on this whole situation? Do you think he's going to be traded by the actual time deadline?
I think it's 50-50. We talked about it yesterday. I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily going to happen or not going to happen. I think that the Pelicans are probably better off not doing the trade now and waiting until the summer where maybe more teams can get involved. It might raise the price of Anthony Davis. But I also wouldn't be surprised if maybe they just took the Lakers' offer and maybe they're just waiting until the last minute to do so, to see if another team jumps in and makes some crazy offer that they cannot turn down. So I don't know. And I don't think the Pelicans actually know, if I'm being honest with you. I think their management is split on it. We've heard reports that some want to trade him now, some don't. I think it all depends on what ownership wants to do in these circumstances when it's a big move like this. When it comes to trading your franchise player, I think it always comes down to what the owner wants to do and when they want to, pull the trigger. So I'm not sure at this point. I do question the Brian Windhorst report that the Pelicans never intended on trading Anthony Davis and that this was all like a sham from the beginning and that they had some ulterior motives to mess with the Lakers front office and their player chemistry. I think that's overblown, but what are your thoughts?
Saying that it was a fallacy from the beginning is complete, in my opinion, dog doo-doo. Because there's no way they would have all these talks and all these offers just because they of this situation. Like, this is it's just wrong. It's just wrong to me. They're kind of backing out on what they thought was going on and thought they were getting a good deal. And they're like, oh, this was just a fake. We were fooling you guys. We're outsmarting the media. But in reality, you're not outsmarting the media.
Well, that's a Brian Windhorst thing, so you don't think it's true?
I don't think it's true, no.
Because he's pretty firm by it. He says,
well, I don't think this was how it started. I think this was like after the talks are really breaking down, then they thought about this was oh well, we tried. Let's talk about it as a practice, or saying we were just testing this out.
Yeah,
I think they just don't want to sound stupid.
Basically, from Adrian Wojnarowski, the Pelicans and the Lakers have not spoken in the last couple of days. Magic Johnson was waiting on some counter offers for the All-Star Center, but the Lakers are running low on hope that there will be an actual trade that will go down before the deadline. It sounded like the Lakers added Josh Hart and Zubac to a package that include Ingram, Kuzma, and Alonzo Ball, and 2 first-round picks. But, again, this is a Wojnarowski report, but according to Brian Windhorst, the Pelicans never intended to make a trade at all. I don't know. It just seems like
there's a lot of conflicting stories.
I don't trust Brian Windhorst on this because how is Brian Windhorst a reporter? Do you know how he got to start?
I have no idea.
He was high school friends with LeBron James, and he became popular because he was LeBron's guy. He was LeBron's
hooking
reporter.
on a friendship.
And now it launched him into a basketball, an NBA, an ESPN reporter, which is great, which should not take anything away from him. But I think that he's always going to, quote unquote, push the company line, and the company line here is LeBron James. If LeBron James is frustrated and says, "Oh, they never want to do anything or they didn't want to engage," then
he's always going to it's going to be LeBron's side. It sounds like
So I don't really take a lot from what Brian Windhorst is saying.
Saying that they never intended to trade him, I think that's not true at all. I think there may be some truth to it. There may be some people in the front office saying, "What are you doing? Don't trade our franchise guy," but the guy's asking for a trade. He obviously does want to be here. Try to get something out of him before he becomes a free agent. I think that's what. To
the Pelicans, they didn't plan on trading Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis said he wasn't going to sign an extension. So it was kind of okay, well now
you need to get something for him.
Yeah, now it changes things. So
it's the smart move to trade him because of the fact he's not going to be on your team for very long. And when he becomes free agent, you're going to get nothing.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about the timing. They don't have to trade him right now, just because he told you last week that he wasn't going to sign a new contract.
Oh, no, but it's one of those things in where, I've said this already in the podcast, but, people are going to be rushing before the deadline to make these quick trades, and they might make a mistake and give you more than you want, in theory, because he's such a talented and elite player.
Mm-hmm.
It's taking advantage of the time limit, almost. Because time is on their side in this situation. Because they obviously, if the time runs out, they keep them. But then for the other people, they're panicking because time is running out.
Now the question is, if the Pelicans do in fact keep Anthony Davis for the rest of the season, do you think they will play him or do you think they will sit him? Sounds like they have not made a decision.
They really don't know. I think it's a 50-50. I know they're not playing him until, they can't play him. There's no more games now until the deadline, but they were going to send him out until the deadline. That's what they said. And so I think it's going to be like he's going to be in the lineup still. I don't think they're not going to play him, but I think honestly it's up to Davis too what he wants to do, because it's like he gets I don't know if he has a choice or not in the situation, but I don't know what you do if you're the Pelicans, because that's kind of a rock and a hard place, because you don't play him, then you're probably frustrating your fan base and him more, and if you play him, he's probably not going to give you everything he has because he doesn't want to get hurt before a free agent year.
Yeah, don't play him. I mean, it's true that it'll be unpopular amongst the fans because the paying public, the season ticket holders, they want to go see.
He's the draw.
But at the same time, it's the NBA, and teams tank, and teams will lose to hopefully better their future situation. And sitting Anthony Davis is the same as, not playing your best players to win games in other circumstances. So I say you sit him because, like you mentioned, you don't want him to get hurt. What if he suffers a big injury? Then his trade value just plummets. Like if Anthony Davis tears a ligament or, I don't know, an Achilles tendon or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
And, of course this probably won't happen, but Anthony Davis has been banged up before. It's not like he's a stranger to the injury report. So I think you got to do what's best for your team, preserve your best asset, lose as many games as possible, and then see what happens with the draft lottery and see what happens with trade offers.
Mm. And due to the fact that draft lottery percentages have changed, that does give them an advantage because they don't need to be in last place to get a first overall pick.
Now, looking at it from the Lakers' point of view, we saw the other day where they got blown out in Indiana. Seemed like there might have been a little bit of tension amongst the players and LeBron James. If there's no trade that happens, how does this team recover and move forward?
I think
because honestly, there's about 8 players on the team that have been talked about being traded. Like it's usually only 1 or 2 guys, but this has affected about 2/3 of your team.
Yeah, this is. I think maybe some will understand the situation based off just talent wise, maybe, but I think some will take maybe a little offense to it. I think this will kind of tear apart the team overall, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They'll have to. I mean, I don't know. It seems like it might take a little bit of time, maybe, to pass, but it will be very interesting to see the Lakers' dynamic going forward because, yeah, there's got to be players in that locker room that are not happy. There's got to be players in there that.
I wouldn't say there'll be a mutiny going on, but I think there'll be some frustrations though. Definitely.
Tonight too, tonight at 5:00 Eastern time, Boston and the Lakers. Sorry, 5:00 Pacific time. Boston and the Lakers. So the Lakers are on the road against the Celtics. This will be right after the deadline. This will be just hours after the deadline. So. I'm not sure what kind of Lakers team we're going to see. Will it be the team that showed up the other night and got blasted by 46 points? Or will it be, I don't know, a galvanized team past the trade deadline? Or will it be a team with 5 players because 8 players got traded? We don't know what it's going to look like.
Yeah. There's a lot of different situations going on when it comes to this trade for Anthony Davis. It's like a free agent sweepstakes, but a whole different scenario. So this is going to be very interesting to say the least. And we'll see how this plays out because we still have a couple more hours before the deadline ends, and we'll see if anything happens. Because anything could still happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if the Lakers are involved in any other trade scenarios. We know they just got Reggie Bullock. Sounds like he'll be available for tonight. But yeah, they're sitting at 27-27. If they lose tonight, they fall under 500, I believe, for the first time this season, if I remember correctly. But yeah, they're currently 2.5 games out of that 8th spot, currently occupied by the Clippers.
Yeah. And so, this is again, this isn't like the only teams we're looking at, like you just said. There's so many different things that can still happen. And I'm looking at my phone at all times, seeing if anything happens as we are doing the show right now, because this minutes could be hours.
I think other than Anthony Davis, Conley and Gasol are probably the two biggest names that could be on the move today.
But again, it was like, was Harrison Barnes, like he was kind of not a big name, but he was not expected to be traded. Him and
Otto Porter. Well, Harrison Barnes was on the block for sure. The Mavericks are definitely looking to trade for him. A couple teams were in on Barnes too. They were looking for their best offer, but no, I think a lot of people knew that the Mavericks were trying to get rid of that contract.
I just didn't expect it to, like, it just came out of nowhere where the trade was finalized. Like, that was just a weird timing. Is all. Both teams were playing at the time. So.
And that leads us to our next topic. Kevin Durant. He ripped the media last night over free agency, over rumors and things like that. What are your thoughts about him just going off on the media last night?
I think the media is just trying to do their job. Like, there's a lot of rumors. This is a time where free agency talks and trade deadline talks are going to be huge. And how he snapped at the media he just was saying things that he was just angry at them for unnecessary reasons, in my opinion. And I think he was at the wrong. But that is, again, my opinion. It was just a little immature of him, is all I'm going to say. But he's always had these immature reactions, too.
So Durant's upset because there's a lot of speculation about him going to the Knicks in the offseason. There's a lot of speculation that he's going there, and he's upset because people are talking about it. And I don't know, man. It just seems like he's so sensitive. Like, is there anyone in sports more sensitive than Kevin Durant?
No. No one. Because he attacks, he curses out fans. He's done that for, there was one time I remember him on the free throw line and someone was trying to distract him and he called them bitch as he was walking back. And just like that's just one of those immature things. It's just like you need to be a grown up. You're gonna hear a bunch of things on the sidelines, and I understand some things get extremely offensive. Don't get me wrong, but it takes a lot of character to ignore them and not get in their face. Have you seen how many times do you think LeBron's been insulted in horrible, fine ways? And I've never really seen him go off on anybody. I could be totally wrong.
He's sensitive too,
But I don't think he's as sensitive as Durant.
Probably not.
Like, Durant just gets really sensitive about every detail about him. Like, he's like, I want to go to play basketball, go to the gym. But you're a celebrity. You are a public figure. You need to accept the fact that you're going to be asked a bunch of questions by the media, and you're going to be the eye of the media throughout your entire career because you're that good of a player. You should take it more as a flatter, not an insult. That you're nothing, but you're always a topic of conversation. But that's just how I see it.
I think that he knows, I think that he knows the media knows. I mean, I'd be shocked. I will honestly say this: I would be floored if he doesn't end up on the Knicks this summer. I would. So
you're going to be on the floor if that happens?
No, I'd be floored.
Like, it would just be, whoa! Like, holy moly, guacamole!
Yeah, I would be completely shocked if he ended up with any other team because it makes way too much sense. He already has ends with the organization. There's just way too much going on, and I think that he's upset because people know it, and he knows it, but he wants the focus to be on this year. And, of course, what are you going to do as a reporter? What are you going to do as a journalist? You're going to talk about things. You're going to look at the future, so whatever. Anyways, we're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the latest on the Bryce Harper drama. We'll talk about what's going on with Antonio Brown and other things that have to do with the Super Bowl champion New England Patriots. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about investing and planning for your retirement. It's always best to get advice from the experts. Best-selling author Harry Dent, America's #1 economist, says the dark window is open. There is an opportunity to rapidly boost your retirement savings before the greatest stock market crash in American history. But this dark window won't be open for long. You can make 10 times the annual average stock market gain in just a few short months. According to the research of renowned Harvard economist Harry Dent, though, this window could slam shut later this year, and nobody on Wall Street is expecting it. This dark window is something bigger by far than anything he's predicted up to this point, and you can make 10 times the annual average stock market gain. Find out more by going to www.harrydentforecast.com. There is a very short time to take advantage of this dark window, so again, go to www.harrydentforecast.com to learn more.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We just talked a lot about the NBA trade deadline because that is the biggest topic of conversation. Now we are moving on to some NFL talk because Antonio Brown has been in a little bit of trouble recently as he has had some domestic abuse issues as of late.
Tell me about it.
He's been reportedly pushed a woman down to the ground recently, and police are investigating. He was not arrested at the time, but there is an investigation that is going on. And with all the talks of him might be being traded or certain situations of that nature, does this put an effect on like his trade stock, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If there's something going on here, I mean, you have to figure that teams would be less likely to bring him in or trade for him if he's got this cloud hanging over his head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a
apparently this has to do
here.
with the mother of his child. So
yeah, well, we don't really know the whole story.
We don't know the whole story, but the woman in question is the mother of his child, and what's in question is that he pushed her to the ground. Mm-hmm. That's what's being investigated. So, yeah. Anyways, it is a eyebrow raising type of report, and I think we will learn more in the coming days, weeks, maybe months. But yeah, it's just another black eye for the league. I mean, the NFL, they just can't seem to get away from this domestic violence issue, and it's just another circumstance. Whether it's real, whether it's accusatory, it doesn't really matter in the eyes of the public opinion. It's just another article, another story about an NFL player involved in off-the-field domestic violence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very unfortunate time because of the fact this is almost like this is just a formality nowadays, isn't it? Almost, it's kind of disappointing overall that it's like we're used to this. Mm-hmm. This is just an everyday story now, which is very unfortunate. And the thing is, we don't know what's true and what's false and what the situations really remain, but that's one of the main black eyes that the NFL has at the moment is the domestic violence issues between their players.
Yeah,
it's become almost like what's the word I'm looking for? It's a epidemic. Mm-hmm. It's a problem. It's a serious issue.
Yeah. Anyways. Bryce Harper, where will he sign?
go to a Japan team just to throw everybody off.
Manny Machado, where will he sign?
Sign to the Japan leagues too, just to throw everybody off.
The Japan League?
Yeah. I don't know. Do something. I'm bored of it already. I kind of had a breakdown to give to the baseball podcast. Not a breakdown, but just like a, oh, come on moment. But overall, it's just like, I am so sick and tired of waiting. Just ask for a price. Wait for your offers. Whoever makes that price, say yes to them. Is it that hard?
Well, it's almost like The Bachelor, right?
Do not compare this to The Bachelor.
It really is.
Okay, explain.
It's exactly The Bachelor.
Explain. I would love for you
Bryce
to explain.
Harper and Manny Machado have many suitors. I would say
Do they have roses
we
to
got
give to the
15
teams?
we got about 15 teams in on both of them individually, respectively. Okay. So it's a process. It's about the money, yes, but it's also about maybe there's other factors like the situation. Maybe it's like, where are you located? Where is your city? What's the weather like? How about the team? Is the team ready to win? How about management? Do I trust that you can build a team around me for the future, for the next 5 to 10 years? There's a lot of different factors. Maybe history of the franchise. Now, it's like The Bachelor, because when The Bachelor is looking at the women, or if it's Bachelorette looking at the guys, or looking at all these potential partners, they are looking at everything. Looks. They're looking at personality. They're looking at their family history. You know, all these things mean a lot. And when you kind of have your pick of the litter, all these things are magnified, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Everything's going to be looked at.
Now, if it's only one team or one suitor that's vying for your heart, maybe you don't look at everything in particular. But when you have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 very quality options, you start breaking these things down into smaller and smaller categories.
Yeah, true.
So
everything is like you said. Everything is looked at under a microscope. Everything is looked at in great detail. But it's been what? Let's see. When did it officially begin? Obviously, it was like after was it as soon as the World Series ended, they could have signed, or when was the actual day?
Winter meetings. I think at the winter meetings is the official start of free agency. So it's been about 2 months. Yeah, a month and a half.
I've never seen a player of this two players of this quality, of this like generational talent, still not signed with the team.
Maybe
regardless
it's a trend.
of any sport.
Maybe it's a trend now, because last year JD Martinez didn't sign until almost March, I believe.
Yeah,
And he was a big name. I mean, yeah, these guys are bigger names, but he was a top guy, you know.
But again, I don't think there was 15 or so teams going after him.
Probably not that many.
Yeah. Okay. So I see what you're getting at, but I just see it at more along lines of like.
So last week we heard that the Padres had met with Bryce Harper, and then we learned in the last couple days that the San Francisco Giants
They came out of nowhere also.
met with Harper in Vegas. Do you know how that story was? How that came about?
I have zero clue. I was
That
like,
story
as soon as I
happened.
read it, I got like I have a bunch of news updates and stuff, and they said Giants are entering Bryce
That
Harper, and I'm like,
story
"Whoa."
happened because a San Francisco Giants fan in Vegas, just on vacationing, having a good time. This guy, he was actually from Sacramento. He ran to Larry Bear, Giants owner, in Vegas.
Oh my!
Yeah, and he actually took a picture of them. There's a picture online you can see of him with the owner of the one of the owners of the San Francisco Giants, and he found out, I guess there's a Bryce Harper sighting in this casino. I don't know exactly where they were at. I'm a little fuzzy on those details, but there's this picture, and this guy was like, hey, just ran into Larry Bear, and then people started putting all the things together. They put all the pieces of evidence together and then realized, and then, yes, it came out that they did meet with Bryce Harper. So very interesting how a fan kind of outed this meeting, I guess.
I give honestly like the Giants owner credit for being this sneaky at first. Like usually when he comes into this type of comes into Vegas, everyone's like, oh, he's meeting with Harper, but no one talked about it.
What I find interesting about this is that the Giants are one of the teams. San Francisco Giants were one of the first teams that expressed like an interest. Like there was like 3 or 4 teams that were like, okay, these teams are in on Harper.
Yeah, Giants were one of
and
them.
And then the Giants kind of faded away. It sounded like they were not even pursuing him anymore. And then this happens, which just it makes me wonder if the Giants are actually a major player again, or if there's still so many teams that are major players that we really haven't narrowed it down. Like, has it just come in a full circle and we're still back at square one, or are we down to 3, 4, 5 teams left? I don't know.
Maybe they've been a player all along, just in the background. We don't even know that. That could be also a possibility. They could have been a secret. Like, there's always talks of mystery teams recently, but I don't know what's really happened. There's so much that's going on in the we don't know about, and that's very unusual in this day and age where we really don't know what's going on. Usually we know, it's almost like a foregone conclusion, this guy's going to this team. But now we have zero clue. Anything could happen. He could sign with like the Toronto Blue Jays for all we know, just out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Like it's literally like anything is a possibility.
So the New England Patriots, they lost Brian Flores as he goes from defensive coordinator to head coach of the Miami Dolphins. They have an opening now, and it sounds like Bill Belichick will be hiring his longtime friend, Greg Schiano, who was most recently the defensive coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Also, most famously, the head coach of the Rutgers football team. I don't know if you remember this, but he was the head coach of Rutgers when they were pretty good. It's been about 10 years maybe. But anyways, Greg Schiano is expected to be joining the Patriots coaching staff, and he'll be announced as the defense coordinator, according to the Boston Globe.
Well, good for him. Obviously, I believe he's going to it's the third coach in 3 years defensively wise. And so, to me, it's probably going to be another new head coach for the NFL. It sounds like that's almost like a trend now. Defensive coordinators for the Patriots get a head coaching job.
I don't know if you remember this, but Greg Schiano was about to be named the University of Tennessee head coach in 2017. But then the university changed their mind last second because of public outcry amongst Tennessee Volunteer fans when people talked about how Schiano was, supportive of Jerry Sandusky. So that happened, and since Tennessee decided to go in a different direction, he became defense coordinator for Ohio State. So it will be interesting as he joins his friend Bill Belichick.
Yes, it is. Did
you see Gronk get hit in the face by a beer can?
I did, and I kind of laughed, but hopefully he's okay.
I think he
threw
fine. Tide
Pods at people, which, with all the controversy of Tide Pods in the last year or two, that's kind of risque, too. Because you remember, people were eating those and dying.
Mm-hmm. So, is that Darwinism at its finest right there?
What? Oh, people being... Well, I don't know what the whole reason was to eat those, but he had to make a whole video of it. I think it was like a commercial even, for not eating Tide Pods. And then you see him throwing them at people. It just... Not a good thing to throw, I guess. Toxic things like that. I just... In theory, I could be looking at this the wrong way, but you also have to look at it in that circumstance.
So it sounds like Marc Gasol might be headed to the Charlotte Hornets before today's deadline, but we don't know if that will happen because they're still working it out. But what would you think about Marc Gasol on the Hornets?
I think it'll be a good fit. They're still trying to get into the playoffs. They're first in their division at the moment, in a very weak division nonetheless, but still first. And it's probably going to try to get it's basically to push them to a playoff spot, nothing more. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if they want him until he retires or something. I'm not sure what's going to go down, but as of right now, it's just to keep them in the first place in their division.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and gives Kemba someone to help out with some of the load.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it definitely would help the team if Marc Gasol's on.
Oh, yeah, he's up there in age, but he's still a progressive player, no doubt about it.
I don't really know how good that makes him, though. I mean, they're 7th right now. They're 2 games under 500, but they look like they're going to make the playoffs. I'd be shocked at this point if they didn't make the playoffs, considering Detroit and Washington and Orlando are on the outside looking in. I don't see any of those teams moving past Charlotte. But I don't know if this kind of trade really makes them better than they are in terms of changing their outlook on if they could win a first-round series or do anything.
I think it's more along the lines of just trying to get better in any way possible to try to just.
I mean, at this point, they're either going to play Toronto or like a Boston, Philly, Indiana type in the first round. That's it. Like they're not going to play anybody worse than that.
If they play Indiana, they might be able to take advantage of the injured Oladipo, but we'll see.
Yeah, maybe so, but Indiana still, I think.
Oh no! I'm not taking
anything
away.
Team.
Not taking anything from Indiana, but losing your star player will put a factor when it comes down to the most important factor, and that's playoffs.
Yes. Anyways, I think that's our show for the day.
Okay, sure. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Please tune us in tomorrow. We'll have every outcome of the deadline. If you want to hear more about the NBA trade deadline, we'll be talking about that later in our basketball podcast. So hopefully we'll have more information of the deadline by that point, which is in a few hours. As always, I'm Jeff Malinoff. That's Mark Souza. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.